Project Nimbus was a mech game that was released back in 2017 and received very positive reviews from the Steam community. Currently, it sits at 85% positive with over 1,000 reviews. Despite this fact, I haven't played it myself, but was very interested when offered the chance to review the sequel, Nimbus Infinity. It's been on early access for a little over a year now, with it finally releasing on June 22nd, a couple of days before this review goes live. Is it a worthy sequel or a disappointing one? As a disclaimer, I did receive a free code from the publisher Game Tomo. While I do appreciate the free code, it will not deter me from a fair and honest review. Sounds good? Let's begin. So when you start up the game, you can choose your difficulty. I stuck with regular difficulty, which appears to be the easy difficulty. Higher difficulties will make it easier for you to go down, as well as increase the enemy's health. In the campaign, you play as Tayo Iwata, a local delivery boy who ends up piloting the main mech in the game known as Warspite. As expected, this mech is much more powerful than the other mechs in the game. This is where you're also given a tutorial on the controls and how to move your mech. For this review, I mainly stuck with a controller as it feels much more natural for me personally. After the initial tutorial is really when the game begins properly. You're taken aboard a ship, as most of the game is told through these 2D anime segments. You'll also hear most of the voice acting that is featured, which is overall pretty mixed. Many of the voices chosen are fine, but the delivery is not very good. Usually when I see this kind of performance, it's more in the direction rather than the voice actors themselves. This is also where most of the character interactions and story is told, which is overall fine. It's not a terrible story, but also one that I really didn't get too invested in. Regarding the character interactions, these were honestly pretty good with some humor thrown in. It helped to humanize many of the veteran pilots and the captain aboard, although some of the dialogue just felt underwhelming. Still, I wish there were more of these moments throughout the campaign. Before each mission, you can equip your mech with various weapons. Unfortunately, you do not unlock any additional weapons by the end, which was a pretty big disappointment for me. Once you find the weapon set that works for you, there really isn't much reason to experiment. For the actual combat itself, it was pretty fun at first, but turned into frustration by the latter missions. When you're in the air, there's a decent sense of speed bursting through the air firing at enemies. It can get pretty intense trying to dodge missiles and lasers all over. The problem comes in for how hard it is to hit certain enemies if you're not in the just right position. Even with high range weaponry, I had to get close just to hit the target since I was just slightly off from where I needed to be. Thankfully, there is a melee option, but I don't recommend using this in first person view unless you want to feel disoriented. The frustration in the later missions is mainly due to two things: difficulty spikes and technical issues. All of a sudden you'll be hit with a barrage of missiles and laser spam as you desperately try to avoid getting hit in order to charge up your shields. This is then exacerbated by just how low the frame rate drops just to keep up with all this madness. Keep in mind, I'm running this game with a Ryzen 5600X and a 3060 Ti, so I couldn't imagine these issues one may have with lower specs. I also crashed several times as well, and many other strange glitches, so that did not help either. The technical issues also bled into the many audio issues I was having. Certain sounds would be incredibly loud while others were near silent. Boosting for some reason also doesn't emit any sound at all, which has to be an oversight of some kind. Bullets that hit your mech sound like the worst kind of stock effects ever. The music is actually good though, so why the sound design wasn't given the same amount of love is questionable. Nimbus Infinity is also incredibly short, as I clocked in just under 3 hours after completing the campaign. Afterwards, I went to try the survival mode, but it's incredibly shallow with nothing really interesting to offer. Just fight as long as you can with the same enemies seen in the campaign. One thing that does baffle me with this team is just how many people worked on this title. Looking at the credits, it seems to be a fairly sizable team, at least for a title like this. I've seen better efforts come out of smaller teams, so I was quite perplexed to see this. Maybe the dev team had the people but lacked the direction. Maybe they didn't have enough time or money to see their vision fully completed. Either way, this is all speculation on my part, so take this with the tiniest grain of salt. I'll keep this one short and simple. I unfortunately can't recommend Nimbus Infinity in good conscience. The game is plagued by numerous technical bugs, a severe lack of content, and is an overall disappointing title. Even though this game isn't too expensive compared to other games, I would recommend you to save your money and wait until Armored Core 6 arrives. If you want something to satiate your mech needs right away, I would also recommend Masked Driver. If you're looking for a more simulation approach, MechWarrior 5 is the perfect game for you. Either way, thank you for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.